When forced, as it seems, by circumstances into utter confusion, get a hold of yourself quickly. Don't be locked out of the rhythm any longer than necessary. You'll be able to keep the beat if you are constantly returning to it. Marcus Aurelius. Hi, everyone. Good morning. Welcome, welcome, welcome. If you are new to this stream, welcome to the Military Retirement Podcast live stream. We do a lot of talking with veterans, with veteran organizations. We bring people on, we do discussions between ourselves. Today it's just me. It's usually me and Victor. Victor's got some stuff going on, so it's just me. I'll be sitting with you. I'll be your host today, all day. So I just want to dive into something before we get into our guest, and that's miscommunication. Miscommunication is something that you're going to deal with on a daily basis, whether it's between you and your family, you and your work, you and your colleagues. Trying to get things done is usually when the miscommunication results come to the top. And what you'll realize is that there's a lot of stuff that happens on the distant end, or the person or the thing that you're trying to work with. And then there's a lot of stuff that happens on your own end. So let me just kind of get into this for a second, because it's something that I've recently been spending a lot of time thinking about. And even today, as I'm speaking with my guest that's going to be coming on a little bit later, Mr. Dave Pere, I realized that there's some flaws in my communication method. There's some flaws in my calendar scheduling. There's some flaws in things that I'm doing, right? So I guess the first main point that I want to talk about is taking accountability. And that's, again, if you're trying to put your paperwork together, if you're trying to get your lead forms and your PCS move and like all that stuff scheduled and put together, make sure that you're double checking everything along the way. And even if you schedule something, make sure you're sharing it with your friends and family, your spouse, your loved ones, so that they know what's going on. But also make sure to go back and double check it, maybe a day or two later, maybe a week later. Don't wait until the day that you have the appointment or the deadline to then go back and check it, because you're going to potentially find that you made a misstep somewhere, or you miscalculated something, or you put something down wrong in the calendar. And that leads to the misinformation, that then leads to the confusion, that leads to not being able to get things accomplished. So the main thing is, yes, communicate, yes, share the information with everybody. But at the same time, you need to hold yourself a little bit accountable as well when it comes to taking care of things, following up on things. Don't just send it and forget it, because you're going to run into a lot of frustrations. So with all that, the next thing I kind of want to dive into real quick is just stress and frustration in general. And again, miscommunication is a big part of that. If you step back away from what's really causing you stress and anxiety and these kind of mental and emotional blockers that you experience in your life, a lot of it comes down to the miscommunication. But the stress that then ensues, the anxiety that then ensues after that, and being able to just deal with that. So just to give you kind of a glimpse into my life over the last couple of weeks, as you may or may not know, I have been traveling around. I've been trying to take care of a lot of personal things so that I can move on to the next chapter of my life safely, securely, and without having a lot of loose ends kind of dangling in the wind. And what I've kind of discovered over the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks especially, is really just having the patience to understand that there's going to be distractions. There's going to be things that don't go as planned. There's going to be things that get pushed and pushed and pushed. And just really having the humility to give the benefit of the doubt for things that are out of your control, but also understanding when to put the line in the sand and say, look, this is what I've been doing. This is what I've been trying to do. And now I have to move forward with my thing, and leaving yourself enough space to buffer things that are going to happen, right? But also don't use up the entire buffer, because once you do that, then you put yourself in a situation where you're then running around trying to figure things out, rushing through things, potentially misstepping with rushing. So because that leads to other things. Like today, for example, my middle of my back is just completely tweaked, and that's a matter of me stressing out a little bit, trying to rush through some things and get things done, trying to hurry up and take care of things, and in the process, not taking care of my body, not taking the proper breaks that I need, and not putting the brakes on when I need to. So for that, for sure, um, just give yourself grace, give the other people grace, but also understand where you need to draw the lines. And it's kind of hard to gauge sometimes. And I'd love to hear in the comments if there's anything that you are dealing with or anything that you've come across, whether it's in regular life or if you're trying to go through that process of getting out of the military, because it's the same kind of thing, right? You're dealing with not only just one or two people, you're dealing with a whole litany of people, and you're trying to process multiple things, paperwork, um, schedule leave time, schedule your VA appointments, like all these kind of things that come to play. And it's a lot of spinning plates in the air at one time. And that's really normal life is going to be like that as well. Once you get out of the military, the thing about it is once you get out of the military, there's not a lot of support mechanisms in place that you have in the military, right? So even if you have to deal with the shitty civilian who's sitting behind the desk, who's holding your paperwork ransom and not signing what you need signed because you forgot to do ABC, really, that's what you're going to deal with in the real world and outside of the military, the real world outside of the military. And you're going to find out that as much as it sucks in the military, there are definitely mechanisms and safety nets in place outside of the military and civilian life, as you'll come to find out if you are on the way to a retirement or on the way to transitioning out. There's not a lot of safety nets out there. So you kind of have to do a lot of stuff on your own. You have to take a lot more responsibility. You have to spend a lot more time um, crossing the T's and dotting the I's so that you can then be successful in what you're trying to do. And again, it's stress, the frustration, usually because of miscommunication. So that's what I'll say about that. But yeah, I'd love to hear in the comments if there's anything that you're dealing with right now in your transition from military to civilian life. If you're getting ready to retire, you're on your way to retiring, you've got a few months left. We've got a military retirement group on Facebook that we run. Currently, there's 2.2 thousand members in there, I believe, 2.3. And it's everybody in there is basically kind of going through or gone through the same situations and is sharing the information between each other so that we can all be better successful through our military transition to civilian life. So if you're not part of that and you want to join, just reach out, look for us on Facebook, come find it, and you can get in there and get involved with that. And it's a really supportive, really great community. It's not a lot of craziness. There's not any drama. Like we're in there really doing the things and spending time with each other and sharing stories and sharing ideas. So we would love to have you there. One more thing I want to mention, if you are in the Atlanta area, if you've been watching the podcast or you've been watching the live streams, you know that myself and Victor will be in Atlanta starting on the 30th of September. And we will be at the Military Influencer Conference there. So if you want to come hang out, if we can set up something like a little meet and greet or something like that, and you want to come hang out and you're in the Atlanta area, you're in Birmingham or you're in Tennessee or wherever, and you want to come hang out, just shoot us a message, hopefully through the Facebook group. But if you need to, just shoot us an email and we will set something up and we'll get that put together so we can do that with you. But I do want to let you know that on that very first day, there's 2 sessions going on. They have a VA claims, PAC Act claims clinic going on the morning of the 30th, starting at 09. And I'm just going to put the link up on the screen. I can actually put it in the chat as well if needed, but I'll put it up on the screen for right now. It's basically Eventbrite. If you just go search VA PAC Act Claims Clinic, and you can find events maybe closer to you. But if you're in the Atlanta area, you happen to be around that area, on the 30th, they are having another claims clinic. I don't believe they're going to have the resources on site to do all the PNT stuff afterwards and finalize and get you your claims done on that day. They do a couple of those, and we've mentioned it before, but they do a few of those. They're usually within the Midwest, like Ohio, Indiana, and it's just a handful of them, and they're over the summer. I was trying to get to one myself, and the last one they had was like mid-August, and I wasn't here in time to take advantage of that. But if you can do that, if you want to wait till the summer and you're trying to put your claims together and you haven't done that through the BDD process or anything like that, definitely look in the summertime around the Midwest, Kentucky, Indiana, Ohio, maybe in Illinois as well. And you can go there, and they have these mobile clinics that will bring you in. They'll look through your records. They'll look through your claims that you want to try to put in. They'll do the PNT exams on site, and they will potentially get you your claim wrapped up and put a bow in it by the end of that day, or at least by the end of the clinic. So, but yeah, if you're in the Atlanta area, go to Eventbrite and you can look up VA PAC Act claims clinics. I'll be there 9 a.m. sharp, and I'll be there with my stack of medical records myself, trying to work my way through the rest of my claims process. So that's that. Now on to the business of the day. So essentially what we're trying to do is reach out to more and more veteran organizations, people who are helping veterans, veteran-based 503Cs. And what we like to do is bring people on, retired or not retired, as long as they're providing resources to veterans and doing things for veterans. And we are trying to share that information because there's information out there that you don't know about and I don't know about. Like, I just recently found out, talking to a colleague, that there's actually a nonprofit organization that does like vehicle mechanic work, and they have mechanics in every single state except for Florida. But I never knew that existed. So it's really just a matter of this kind of expanding the conversation out and making it a little bit more broader information to the audience, so that every one of you out there can get this information if you need it. If you don't need it, you hear it, you can pass it on to somebody else, but we can just continue to build those concentric circles going out, getting information into the hands of people that need it. So with that, I am going to bring on our guest, Mr. David Pere. He is the military to millionaire guy. He's the guy behind the thing. He's doing a lot of stuff, and I really want to allow him the space to talk about everything he's doing. I want to get into some of the details about investing, about some of the Mastermind program and things like that. I know we had him on the show, and I'll have that linked up right there somewhere in the top after the live stream's over. If you want to go back and watch that interview, that was a great interview we did. And I'm glad that he took the time to come back today and spend some time with us. So without further ado, Mr. Dave Pere.
Well, hello.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm doing good, man. I want to first apologize to you, as I was speaking before you came on, about miscommunications and misinterpretations of things, and that completely taking responsibility for all of that. So,
oh, it's all good. I mean, I'm sure it was probably on me as well. I'm sure there's an invite that came through that I had to fire my assistant. I bet it was somewhere in that time frame that there was just an email where it was like, oh, I should have accepted that invite, and I didn't.
right.
How do I turn off my... There we go.
The virtual backgrounds.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't need a virtual background. I'm just hanging out in the room. So, but yeah, no, all good, all good. I got my grocery shopping done and made it here, and I wasn't too late, and so life is good. So, what do we want to chat about?
Yeah, so I just wanted to. I know people know you. Some people know you. Some people may not know you. We did an interview, as I mentioned, And we talked about your military transition. In the end of it, we kind of got into what you're actually doing outside of that and how you've built your business. But I really want to just educate people, because I've been recommending you to many people, and I'm sure there's a handful of folks that are in the mastermind now as it sits, who have been part of that program, who have been able to share information with others, learn about wealth building, about um, investing, about some of these things that are not so common to everybody out there, and a lot of people will kind of see it as a far off thing that they're not able to touch because they're not an accredited investor, or they don't have $1 million, or they don't have the means to do it. And I think you've kind of proved that there's ways to do it that you can do without having just a surplus of cash sitting around the house. And you've done it yourself, right? You started off with real estate, and now you're doing a multitude of other things, but you started off doing that slowly over time, and you quickly figured out the kind of formula to it. And now you're taking that and you're educating other folks out there, and you're also just literally having conversations, because you also have a Facebook group as well. So I just kind of want to educate people on that, and then we can go down whatever rabbit holes and whatever directions of things you've got going on. And as far as different opportunities, or like whatever people can try to do to get their foot in the door if they haven't actually started doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. I know it's funny because people see, where I'm at right now, and they're like, "Oh man, I don't see a way to get there in the next, 3 years." And I'm like, "Well,
Right.
it's been in 3 months, it'll be 9 years since I bought my first house." So, I think the problem is there's all these people online who are saying it's, you can get rich quick. It's so easy. You can't, it's all the buzzword hype. And the reality is, unfortunately, all those guys online are, they share gross income, gross revenue, gross numbers. I mean, I call them out all the time. I just posted one yesterday on my Instagram where I was calling out ironically a friend, and he's a great sales guy. He does a lot of business, but his sales method is not really my style. And he posted it was just a bank statement the other day showing his monthly payment, and he was like, "Our monthly payment's $656. This place rents for $1,780, so we make $1,110 or whatever it is a month on it." And I'm like, well, first off, that's an interest only payment, which is really weird. Like, why would you not want to pay principal or tax? But it's like, it doesn't show taxes, it doesn't show insurance, it doesn't show vacancy, it doesn't talk about management fees or any maintenance or capital expenditures. And I'm like, bro, here's a deal that on its own would not be a bad deal. I mean, if he put all the real numbers out there, my gut says if he paid 100 for it and he's got it rented for 1780, he's probably still clearing $400 or $500 a month on it. But he wants to make the numbers that much better and sexier and get people to invest. And I'm just like, man, there's probably $400 or $500 a month, maybe a little bit more worth of expenses that you're not even discussing on that. And it's so hard for me to get behind on that. And I'm curious, actually, on a $100,000 home, you put $20K down on. I'm like 600. Huh?
I heard something.
Oh, nope, I'm in here. Sorry, my kiddo's in the other room. On a $100,000 house, if you're paying $656 in interest only, like that's got to be like a 15% note. I mean, that's actually, I'm really curious now, because that's ridiculously high, because I've got mortgage payments that aren't much more than that with principal and taxes and insurance. I'm like, anyway, and so people see that and they think this is easy, this is quick, this is, and then they don't get the results right away. It's like fat loss, right? When you see someone doing roids who's like, you can look like me if you do this with your diet, and then you're like 2 months in, you're having results, but they're not the results you expected. So you get demoralized, and it's like, no, just stay consistent. Like, that's all it is. Just stay consistent and you will be fine. Sure, I had a couple big wins, but I also had a couple big losses. So, I mean, it evens out. It's a slow and steady journey. But it's been fun. Yeah, it's been fun. So, I mean, to answer your question, right, like my favorite strategy to talk to service members and vets about is using their VA loan to buy like a duplex, triplex, fourplex. And you rent one unit, you live in the rest, and in any market you're in, that'll cut your living expenses dramatically, if not have you living for free or even getting paid to live there, depending on how you buy the place. And there's no faster way to kind of jumpstart your trajectory to financial freedom than, say you were paying $2,000 a month on a mortgage. Now you're paying 500, but all your expenses are still being paid. You save $1,500 a month. I mean, that's $18,000 a year towards investing. That goes a long way. I mean, if you just stuck that in an index fund for like 3-4 years, you'd have over $1 million by the time you retired if you never touched it again. So, if you just consistently reinvested that in a way that it compounded, you'd be set off that one property. And so if you do that and then you PCS and you do it again, and then you PCS and you do it again, and then you get out and you do it, it's now all of a sudden you've got 3, 4, 5 houses that 30 years from now will be paid off if you don't refi them. They'll be pumping money into your bank account. They'll have probably almost doubled in value by then, if not more than doubled in value by then. And you'll have, $1.2 million in equity plus whatever you invested on the side. It's such a simple move, but it's just a long-term move. So it's not as sexy for people.
Right. Yeah, that's the thing that really gets people caught up. And as you mentioned, like the weight loss thing, it depends on what you're measuring, right? I mean, if you're doing weight loss and you're only measuring things on a scale, you're never going to get the results that you want because the scale is going to lie to you, essentially, right? The more muscle you, like if you're working out and you're starting to eat a little bit leaner or whatever, and you're trying to lose weight, right? But then you get on the scale and you're like 10 pounds heavier. If you look in the mirror and you look at your body fat index and those kind of things, like that'll show you something different than the scale is actually going to show you, right? So,
oh yeah, I'm the perfect example of that this year. I was 225, 230 in January, and I was like, I'm going to get down to like 205, like 195, 205. That's kind of my goal. And then what I realized is the main reason I gained all that weight is my test had dropped like ridiculously low. I think I was at like 170. And so I went on TRT, and I've always been a power lifter, heavy gym guy. And so I then went from 225, 230 to right now I'm walking around at 245. And yet I look better. I doubled all my lifts, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's what happens when your body can actually produce muscle. I'm okay with that. Like, I'm okay with having gained 15 pounds and going up to a 455 deadlift and a 315 bench again. I haven't seen those numbers since, early 20s. And so I was like, yeah, I'll just change my goal. Like, I don't necessarily care about the number. I care about how I feel, and I feel great. So
yeah. And that's really at the end of the day, that's kind of what it is. I know you talk about going straight from like doing the house hack or the flip or the multifamily where you live in one and rent out the others, and the savings on the back end of that. And also just to underscore what you said, like it takes time. Like you can't just buy a fourplex and then rent out three of the other units and then expect to start cash flowing like from day one, because how did you buy it? Is it in rentable condition? Like, is there anything else that you have to do? Take care of the yard, take care of shingles and stuff like that. And then also vetting people to get the right people in to rent from you. Like that's a whole thing in itself. But as far as going straight into investing, like I want to kind of backtrack a little bit. And one thing that I not recently did, but after I retired, and I think it was after we had our conversation, within that year, I was able to allocate money in different directions and actually pay off all my debt and get rid of it. And it was like this large muscle movement where everything just kind of coalesced into one thing, and then I just kind of hit the home run at the end of it and knocked it all out. But as far as the investing in properties or investing in real estate, and then taking that savings that you're getting from that investment, if somebody's still sitting with credit card debt, if somebody, like say they retired from the military and bought a debt, and maybe they've got the money to do that, maybe they jumped into a job that pays them 150, 200,000 a year or whatever. How do you think about shifting the mindset? Is there any kind of things that you've used with other people that helps shift the mindset from the kind of scarcity mindset to the wealth investing building mindset?
Man, I think it's almost more practiced than anything. And I think it's really getting around the right people. If you're around your typical military, like it's funny because if you go to like a, staff NCO housing on base, it's like everybody, I mean, it is the epitome of like keeping up with the Joneses. It's nicer cars. Everybody's got a toy in their garage, or they're woodworking, or they're, and whatever that hobby is, they've gone all out. And so you've got guys with like crazy side by sides, or jacked up Jeeps, or badass race cars, or my neighbor across the street, he made money on it, so good for him. But he had a gnarly wood shop that probably was $10,000 or $20,000 worth of stuff. And it's funny because it's like, it's just a muscle thing to get. And I'm not great at it. I still spend money on things that I don't need to spend money on. But the goal is to try to not spend anything that has an interest tied to it on items that don't bring you at least that back in money. And so, it's one thing to be like my neighbor across the street spends all this money on a wood shop, then turns around and makes plaques and going away gifts and whatever, and is profitable. Okay, I would consider that a worthwhile purchase. And then, two houses down, you've got the neighbor with the really baller Jeep that's decked out that has always got an issue and is not really going up in value. It's not losing a ton. Jeeps hold their value fairly well, but he's paying interest on it and all the parts he's buying. And, it's like, well, that's a long term. That's going to hold you back more than anything. It's an anchor. And to your point, it's interesting because a lot of people get stuck. They do the right thing, which is they start wanting to put their money into investments, which is great. And they overlook the debt. And they're like, well, that's, just a set payment. But the reality is, like, especially credit card debt, like right now, if you're in the 18 to 22% range or whatever on credit card debt, like, can you outpace that with an investment? Yes, it's possible. Is it likely? Probably not. Like, that's a pretty high return benchmark to get just to break even on that debt. Whereas paying the credit card off is a guaranteed return. And that's where I try to tell people, I'm like, for me, anything over 7% interest, I pay off as fast as humanly possible. And, unfortunately with the divorce, I did accumulate some debt. And so I still have a little bit of that left, but I've got a payout coming, sometime in the next month, probably, from a house, an apartment complex that we sold. And we did it where we financed the deal to the seller, and he is in the process of refinancing it now. And so whenever that refinance goes, I'm going to get a check for, depending on what we have to pay down in the business, anywhere from $105,000 to $84,000. And that check, which I know people hear that and they're like, oh my God, it must be nice. I'm like, well, I put $100,000 into that deal 2 years ago, and then we worked it for, it was 3 properties. And so we put 100 in, we're probably going to end up pulling about 250, 300 out. But I mean, like, it's been a meeting every week for 3 years. It's been trips to that city every month for 3 years. There's more to it. So, but I'm expecting between 80 to 105,000 that'll hit my account, and I'm going to dump that into, but when that hits, I will no longer have any debt. The only debt I might still keep is my Tesla. And I bought that off a friend and I got it for a steal. I got it for what he owed on it. So like I bought it with 15,000 in equity, and it will hold its value at this point pretty well, because I've got kind of one of the unicorn eras of the Model X where I have full self-driving and free supercharging for life. So it'll hold its value fairly well. But I'm already paying that off really fast. And so like, I might just leave that because I'm not really seeing interest payments on it anyway, but all my credit cards, anything else is going to get paid off. And then I will reinvest, what's left over, because you're right. Like, if I have $10,000 on a credit card at 20%, paying that off is a guaranteed return. Even though I'm confident I can outpace 20% on most of my investments at this point, it's not guaranteed. So you should always prioritize the guaranteed return. And again, paying off a credit card is not sexy. It is not anywhere near as cool as owning an apartment complex as far as bragging rights or anything, but it is the smarter move, 9 times out of 10. And most people don't have the ability to, basically guarantee or hedge that they're going to beat that. So you might as well take that win, and that debt will hold you back. It'll hold you back from more credit opportunities. It'll hold you back from, those payments will eat into your cash flow. And that's the other interesting thing to run, is like the math on, it's like right now, my payment on my car, I'm not super worried about paying it down. And a big part of that is because like since I've been paying it down fast, I don't actually owe the next payment on it until like June of 25.
Right.
So I'm like, well, even if I didn't pay it again for the next 10 months, 9 months, it wouldn't cost me $1. Whereas my credit cards cost me X amount every month. There's a weird like mathematical thing though, where at some point, even at a low interest rate, it does make sense to pay off the debt. So like if you, let's say my car prior to this, I had a $12,000 loan on it that was like 3% interest, 2.5% interest, something like that. And so my payment on it was like 180. So at $12,000, $180 a month doesn't really bother me. But when the loan dropped to like 4,000, I was like, there's not anywhere else I can put $4,000 that's going to get me $180 a month. So I might as well just pay this off. And that's when I did. I just dumped a check into it. I was like, cool. I just freed up $200 a month in essentially cash flow to myself that I can now reinvest. And I would rather do that. So I think the name of the game for me is like the amount of money that you can keep coming in every month over the amount of money you put out every month. The savings gap is the fastest way to achieve wealth. I don't know.
Yeah, that's actually an incredible way to think about it. I don't think I've ever really thought about it that way, but yeah, if you're thinking about putting $5,000 into a CD or $10,000 into a CD or a savings account or something like that, versus paying off $10,000 worth of debt, that's taking away, $100, $200, $300 a month from you. That's some real serious, like quick and easy math to do. And it should be in most cases a no-brainer, right?
Yeah. And it's just, most people think of it as, oh, but this investment's going to get me this much. It's like, well, yeah, but this debt is costing you more than that. Just put the money
Right.
there.
Yep.
Especially with credit cards. And the reason I say that with credit cards is because, unlike the auto loan, which is why they're not usually as sexy for me to pay off, if you have a fixed rate, fixed debt loan like auto, you pay it down from 10,000 to 5,000, your payment's the same until you get it to zero. Or if you refi, which is dumb. Whereas credit, like if you pay it from 10,000 to 5,000, you just slashed your monthly payment in half. And that's an instant ROI. And so, paying off that revolving stuff it's good. It's great. Like every time you do it, you're like, oh, now I have more month, now I have more cash that I can pay it off faster with next month. And then the real trick is once you get it paid off, you keep it paid off.
Right.
And you take what you were spending on debt and you invest that. And now instead of investing, $1,000 a month, you're investing $2,000 a month, and it goes a lot faster. It snowballs.
Yeah. And so just for people out in the audience, just for your audience and my audience both, but say that they're getting out of the military and I know we probably discussed this a little bit, but I just want to kind of go into a little bit deeper on it. If they're coming off of active duty, whether they're retiring or they're just coming off active duty just because, how soon do you think they should start thinking about this stuff? Depending on the circumstances and like how much credit card debt they're holding and how many car payments they're making and child support and like all those kind of different things. But let's just say for the average 30-year-old who has a car, who's paying a mortgage on a house, and coming off of active duty and going into the civilian sector, maybe they have a job lined up, maybe they don't. Usually they do if they are doing that. But let's just say they're trying to start thinking about like working back and getting away from that. How soon, and what would be like the very first thing you would do? Like, would it be sitting down with your spouse or your girlfriend or boyfriend, or would it be like writing out all the expenses or writing out a plan? Like what would that kind of first step look like?
Yeah. All right. So for the how soon, my answer on this is such a cop out: immediately. And I say that because every dollar you invest now is worth infinitely more than the dollar you invest in the future, for two reasons. One, we all know the guy who, and I've been guilty of this, so I am this guy on some levels, who's like, I'll start the diet next Monday.
Right.
Okay, now I'm gonna start the diet next Monday because there's this thing that I'll start this workout plan next Monday. And it's like, maybe you will, maybe you won't, but if you just started it, then you'd be better off, even if it wasn't perfect. Even if you missed that day and you did 6 out of 7 days this week and then got back at it, like that would still be fine. And so I say immediately because like the way money compounds. Let's say you earn 7% return, which is like the S&P 500, average for the last 60 years. Your money doubles every decade. And so if you invest $1 at 20, it's worth 2 invested at 30. It's worth, we'll use bigger numbers. We'll make it more fun. If you put $1,000 in when you're 20, it's worth putting $2,000 every year in when you're 30, or 4,000 when you're 40, or 8,000 when you're 50, or 16 grand a year when you're 60. Like, would you rather put 1,000 in now, or would you rather have to put 16,000 in when you're 60 to be able to retire at 65? I'd rather put 1,000 in right now and let it ride. And so, the sooner you can get to that. Now, I will say the caveat there being, if you are planning to exit the service, especially if you don't have a job lined up, I think the single most important thing is a runway. And so I'm not usually a huge, like, must have an emergency fund, must have a runway, must have a whatever guy. But in that scenario, absolutely, because it might take you longer to find a house. There are unexpected expenses when you get out of the military. There are things that will pop up. It might take you longer to get a job. There might be expenses associated with commuting that you weren't planning on. And so if you don't have money set aside, then you're going to have to use credit, and that just hurts you much longer than if you have the cash sitting aside. And so, I would say that first move should be building up a runway for the transition. And then, hey, once you've been out for 6 months and you realize, like, oh, I don't need all this, then throw it into an investment. Cool. I really like both your ideas there. I think if you've got a significant other, a conversation with them is important, especially if you are the spender or if they are the spender. Like, I think getting everybody on the same page about whether it's a joint account or how you're going to pay yourself first or whatever. And I think prioritizing paying that investment first every month is huge. But I would normally default to your other answer, which is expenses. And I'm not historically great at this, although I have my P&L in front of me right now, and I've been highlighting things and questioning things, and I'm hiring a CFO right now, but I find it very boring and monotonous. And so when I got to a point where I was making more money than I was putting out, I just kind of was like, okay, we're good. I'm going to not spend every month tightening down my expenses. And realistically, my net worth would probably be $500,000 more over the last 3 years had I just been better about tightening down my expenses every month and still living, not paycheck to paycheck, but like really tight on my budget. But I've chosen to enjoy life a little bit. I've done a lot of travel. I've spent a lot of time and energy with the family and the kid, and so no regrets there. But I think that's usually the most beneficial thing somebody can do is print out their last 90 days of bank statements and figure out where their money went. And then once you know where your money goes, go, wow, I didn't realize I was spending $2,000 a month or $500 a month on food, like eating out, but I'm also spending $1,000 a month on groceries. What if I just spent the $1,000 a month on groceries, and instead of throwing stuff out, I just cut the 500. Now I've got 500 to invest, or cut it from 500 to 250. You go out every other week instead of every week, or a lot of people, especially in the service, it's booze, and so there's a lot of expenses where you can cut back just a little bit and save that money. Like, right there is your money to invest, and you can begin investing immediately, and it becomes addicting if you pay attention to it. All of a sudden you're like, wow, I have $1,000 in here. I have 2,000. I have 3,000. I have 8,000. I have 10. I have 15. I have, my 7-year-old has $15,000 in a bank account right now that he doesn't know about because I've just been putting money in every month, $300 a month. And that's cool. Like, it's fun to watch once it gets to a point where you're like, oh, there's some actual money in here. Like, it gets fun.
I want to kind of take a little bit of a left turn, and I want to kind of ask you about when you're thinking about investing in something, whether it's real estate, whether it's property, whether it's whatever it happens to be, and you're also thinking about cutting expenses because you just like you've made enough money to kind of be able to do what you want, but you're also looking at your expenses and the P&L and seeing like where are things not making sense. What have I actually been like doing an audit on a more
the changes
on a regular basis, right?
Let's see.
But where's the breaking point for you of like, for simple stuff like, okay, We can go to the movies with the kids and go buy some candy and stuff, but where's kind of the breaking point of like the actual return on the investment, meaning the time, the quality, the time spent with family versus being like, this is a little bit ridiculous to spend, $375 on a movie when we could just sit at home and make the popcorn together and maybe figure out a creative way to make the candy together and spend a little bit less more money. Where's kind of like that breaking point for you between those two?
Well, I guess for one, I am definitely a movie guy. I like movie theaters. Lucky enough for me, my 7-year-old does not. So it makes that a little bit easier because you're right. They've gotten really expensive lately.
Right.
But I'm good. Like my kid makes fun of me. I bought those like popcorn buckets, like plastic reusable buckets for like $3 a piece on Amazon. I bought 3 of them, and he made fun of me just today because he saw one sitting on the counter. He's like, "You really love your popcorn." I'm like, "Movie night," and so I will. Yeah, I'll just pop a bowl of popcorn and with a friend or a kid or whatever, and just sit and watch a movie at the house. And so what I did, I mean, I think in my case, what I did was I bought a TV that was not egregious but nice, and then I bought a nice mount for it that I can move around the studio. And then I bought a pretty, I mean, again, decent, but not like overly expensive surround sound, like a nice Dolby Atmos type surround sound. And then I actually bought like the little LED lights that go on the back of the TV. So like if the right side of the screen is blue and the left is yellow, the lights behind it match. So it's like the aura. And I bought a nice couch. And so I have like a really comfortable setup that is kind of movie-esque, that I just put a little bit of money into, probably 2 or 3, maybe 4 movie nights worth of money into, so that it's more enjoyable to sit and watch movies there. And then, yeah, we do that. I think if anything, to answer your question, the best place to spend money is experiences, memories. And so for me, a lot of that is, travel, or it's doing something fun out in town, taking him to like next in 2 weeks or whatever, my next weekend with him. I think I'm going to take him. I found a place around here that you can rent like the one wheels, like the little one wheel skateboard things. And they have like an outdoor track that you can race them on. They have like ramps and stuff. And I've always thought it'd be fun to own one of those. And so I'm like, dude, for $100, the 2 of us can go for like 3 hours and ride these on an outdoor track. That sounds way better than buying the one wheel. And if I fall in love with it, then okay, I'll buy a one wheel. But if I don't, like, now I got it out of my system. And so like that experience to me is 100% worth it. Yes, you can eat the chips.
Out of the popcorn bowl.
Whatever keeps him happy. I forgot last time he was here, he bought a big thing of sour cream and onion chips, and he just found them. He's like, I found chips. I'm like, well, they're yours.
Nice.
I need to throw them out today because I'm going back on the carnivore diet, and the last thing I need is chips in the cabinet. But anyway, so like, yeah, experiences. Like, I think what it is, you really got to boil down. You go through your list and you figure out what's the thing or things that we as a family or I love to do. You don't have to cut that out. Like my buddy Brian Lubin, it's travel for him. For me, it's travel, but he's like a spend all his money on the nice hotels guy, and I'm like don't care about that, but let's go find a 4-wheeler to rip through the mountains. And so we spend it differently, but that's where we spend our money. For a lot of people, like if it is truly like movies are the thing, then I would say invest a little bit in your home theater to make it more enjoyable. And now you don't have to go to the movies. You can, especially now with Prime being the way it is, you can watch most movie theater movies like 2 weeks after they come out. Not a big deal. So I would put the money into, figuring out how to enjoy those experiences, because the experience and the memories are what stays. The toy or the drinking, like it's not the beer that you remember, it's the night out. So like, I don't know, don't drink as much, or be the DD and you still get to have fun with your buddies. I don't know. Or buy a Tesla that drives itself. So if you do have a drink or two, you can still be the DD. I'm not advocating for that, but
don't try that in real life.
Yeah. Though my Tesla will definitely get me home. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, no, it's awesome, and it's really great. I'm glad you get to spend a little bit more time at home with the kid, doing the things that you want to do. And I know I'm kind of like taking out of that time right now. And now I'm feeling like
No, you're totally fine.
horrible.
Totally fine. He should have been asleep anyway. He little turd. My alarm went off at 6:30 this morning, and he did not go back to. He was like, "That's loud. Let's watch TV." I was like, "No,
Right.
you go back to sleep. I want to work." No, we have been up since 7.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really like that. I know, like trying to find the time to do that kind of stuff. And for me, it's my kids are, 1,000 miles away or whatever it is. And so whenever they do call, it's weird hours of the day or night. And I intentionally like turn off everything and shut down everything to spend time with them. But yeah, to your point, like spending money and also time on experiences versus spending it on just stuff.
Yeah.
It's really good. I want to, for sure, give you enough space to let people know about what you think is important for them if they want to go down. Because, like I said in the beginning, you do a ton of investment stuff, and now you're expanding that out into other areas. And not only that, like you're taking a lot of people under your wing with your group and teaching people how they can become investors, how they can try to invest some of their money and build some wealth, and not just like short-term wealth. Really, the game is long-term, like you said. But I think you also are teaching in your network. You're also teaching people how to change their mindset about how the relationship that they have with money. And so I definitely want to give as much time for that, and anything that you want to point to, or if you want to just go into some discussion points of what's like a hot topic on your mind about this stuff, because you've been doing it day in and day out, and you are interfacing with folks day in and day out on this kind of stuff. The kind of selfish question I want to ask at the end of that is like, your thoughts on the market itself, because a lot of people, when they're getting out, just the other day we had a bunch of questions about what do the taxes look like in each state. And I'm like, well, define taxes. Is it state taxes? Is it federal taxes? Is it income tax? Is it property tax? Like what's the definition of that? But yeah, any of that.
Yeah. Well, that's let's see. Hot topic right now, I think, would be refinancing. Everybody heard the Fed cut rates for the first time in 2-3 years, and posts have been just popping up all over my page. And I don't think I'm not refinancing yet. I'm going to wait till probably, give it another couple months. I bet they cut rates 1 or 2 more times this year. But the Fed rate doesn't directly tie to interest rates on loans anyway. That's market speculation. So, realistically, when the Fed is expected to cut rates, the rates of loans have probably already come to that point before the Fed actually cuts the rate, because of how the market is. They do it in anticipation. But I think, the answer should be like, if you don't recoup all your costs within 36 months, so if it costs you $2,000 to refinance, it better cut at least $2,000 over the next 3 years out of your mortgage payment. That's the bare minimum. If you can't recoup your costs in 3 years, I would say don't even mess with it. And then I think it also depends on your long-term goals. Like, so many people are interested in doing this. It's interesting because I will watch people who are planning to move in a year, planning to sell their house when they move, do a refinance that would take them 3 years to recoup their money and feel good about it because of how much they're saving and their rate. And I'm like, you're an idiot. You just spent $3,600 to save $1,200 a year, and you're moving in a year. So you will have $2,400 of that you'll never recoup. What benefit did it, like, if you had the $3,600, just put it into your payment for the next 3 years and you would be better off. Like, you'd save more money. And so it's interesting how sucked into interest rates people get, and they think they're making a good move. My ex-wife, God bless her, if she ever hears this, she's going to be so mad, but like, she's just not, she was so wrapped up in interest rates during COVID. I think she's locked at like a 3.75 or 3.85 on the home. And she was doing everything she could to try to get to a point where she could refinance during COVID to drop it to like 3.15 or 2.75 or whatever. But that house was 12 years into the amortization cycle. And so I'm like, you're going to save an interest percentage. Great. Your payment will go down a little bit if you don't pull any cash out, but you restarted the amortization cycle. The bank wins if the amortization cycle is restarted. That's like, people don't realize, like, by the time you're 12 months into a mortgage, like when you first buy a house, you're, 2/3 of your payments going to interest. When you get to about 50% paid off, it starts to even out. And then it starts to get to where like the last third of the loan is where the majority of the mortgage is paid down. And so the faster you can accelerate that and get past the amortization piece, the better for you, the worse for the bank, because every time you make more of a payment on that and you cut that off, you're cutting interest off. Not like what the bank is eating is like they are banking on you being a knucklehead and refinancing every 3 to 5 years over a rate. And then they get to just get interest. You refi back to interest payments, you refi back to interest payments, you refi. That's where they win. So that's why it's structured that way. They are banking on people moving or selling more than every 30 years so that they don't actually pay their property off. And the bank continues to win by just making interest money and then recycling your principal. And, it caused a couple fights with us, but I was like, why in the world? Like, yes, your payment will be $100 cheaper, $200 cheaper, $300 cheaper, whatever it is, but you're going to be paying less in principal off every month. And it might be $200 cheaper, but that $200 was going to principal. So that's money. That's net worth. Now it's instead of being like, hey, we're paying $400 to interest and $600 to principal or whatever the math is. Now we're paying, trying to make the math here, $200 cheaper, $400 to interest and $400 to principal. So yeah, your payment's $200 cheaper, but you're paying the exact same amount of interest as you were. Like, you were at the point where it doesn't make sense to do this anymore. So it's just interesting to watch people have gotten sucked into what the bank and banks are telling them, which makes sense. But so that's the big hype right now. And I'm like, don't do it until you can pay it off in 36 months and you're not going to be moving. Like this house, I fully intend to refinance this in probably 2 months, 3 months. But I'm also on a 9% interest, 25-year amortized investor loan on this house. And now that I live here, I'm gonna put it into a 30-year amortized, primary residence mortgage. So I'm probably gonna go from a 9% to a 5%. And that's gonna cut my payment by like $600 or $700. And I'm only 2 years into the amortization cycle. So it's like, okay, whatever. Actually, I'm probably going from a 25 to a 30. I'll probably cut my payment like close to $1,000. No. So, okay, that's a little different, but, I would say that's like the hot topic, man. As far as like my normal tangents, we kind of hit the two big ones, like know where your money goes and increase your savings gap. I think the house act's the single best way to do that. Outside of that, I think the biggest thing people need to do is they need to sit down and figure out their goals. Where do you want to be in 10 years? And the reason for that is not so much like, oh, I want to be wealthy. Okay, cool. So you and everybody else. Do you want to be wealthy like a house flipper where you're making $200,000 a month, but you're hustling 24/7, working harder than you were when you were in the military or just as hard? Or do you want to be wealthy like a passive syndication investor who makes, $10,000 or $20,000 a month and does nothing, maybe analyzes a deal or two a week and can sit on the beach, And so it's figuring out how actively you want to be involved in your business and how you want that to look, how you want your lifestyle to look. And then from there, once you know that, now you can figure out like the vehicle that best fits your goals and just spend time learning about that. So if you're like, I want to go all in on options trading, great. Learn all things options trading. Please don't get sucked into all the get rich fast, quick coaching programs. I got a buddy I can introduce you to who actually knows what he's doing. But like, if you want to get, if you want to do the passive investing in syndications, great. Go read Hands Off Investor by Brian Burke, and he'll teach you how to analyze deals so that you don't buy the wrong one. So I think that's probably where I'd go next. And then, the market. No idea. I'd love to tell you I have an idea. everything I've thought for the last few years has just been bonkers, and I have no clue what is going to happen with the election. My gut is that the Fed is going to continue to drop rates, and the party that's in power right now will pretend that they had something to do with that and not tell the world that the Federal Reserve is a privately owned company that is not a federal company at all, and that they just conveniently named themselves that and run our interest rates. And they're in the political party, and then they'll take all the credit, even though it's not them at all. And it's interesting, that whole piece of the puzzle. People will buy it. They'll buy votes, not boats. They'll probably buy boats too, but they'll buy votes. And then eventually it'll all come crashing down. It's weird because by every account ever in like cyclical data, we should have already hit a recession in the real estate market. We should have hit it in the last like 4 to 6 years. I mean, it's usually an 8 to 12 year cycle. So if you figure like 08 was the last crash, like we should have hit it 4 years ago. And the weird thing is, when rates drop, I think prices are going to go back up a little bit. So I don't know if this is like a new, like kind of just plateau because of inflation. The real estate has not been easy the last couple of years, but I don't think that was a recession per se. I don't think real estate's going to lead the recession. I've been watching the auto industry a lot, actually, because they were doing so much like over MSRP. And what I'm seeing now on these auction sites that I'm watching is a lot of people are selling their toys, or trying to, at a much faster rate. So like I've been eyeballing Porsches, and when I was first looking at GT3 RSs and Turbo S's, it was like one would pop up on these two auction sites every 2 or 3 weeks, and they'd go for $250,000 to $500K. And now they're popping up every week, every couple days. And it started to get faster. And a lot of them, like more and more frequently, they're not hitting reserve, and they're not actually selling, and they're coming back on. And so I'm starting to see the price people are paying go down, and I'm starting to see the frequency at which they hit the auction go up. And I'm like, people are starting to offload toys. And that to me is a bigger indicator of what we're feeling in the market than anything in the real estate world, because the real estate world's weird right now. 60-70% of people are locked into 3% interest rate, don't really have a reason to move. Why would you? You can't beat that rate. And if they're smart, they won't. So the lock-in effect is strong. I think it's going to be auto industry, consumer stuff, and unemployment that drives where we see the market. And I just don't know how that looks in the future.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it was about 2 years ago now since we talked last. Almost, it's been a while. But yeah, we talked about it then, and we were both kind of scratching our heads because we were expecting a bubble to happen, and the bubble didn't happen, and we were a little bit past it at that point. And now we're well past it at this point. But the thing that you bring up about autos, and if anybody for you out in the audience watching or listening, and you're like, what the hell's automobiles? What the hell's this stuff have to do with like investing? Like, it's all investing, right? Whether you're buying automobiles and selling automobiles, whether you're buying baseball cards and selling baseball cards, like whatever you buy to see if you can get a better return value on it on the other side, it's all investing, and it all revolves around the same kind of principles.
Yeah.
Well, the auto industry.
It's all the consumer index, right? It's if people are willing to overpay for things, the market is healthy, and if people are not, the market is not healthy. Right. So we're slowly coming back down on that consumer price index.
Yeah, I got a feeling like the COVID thing kind of put this extra like bump stop in between the recession in 2008 and the recession that we should have already seen recently. I feel like COVID and then that kind of global lockdown, it hit a lot of industries. It hit a lot of the shipping and transport industry, trying to get raw materials and things like that, plus the job industry itself, like trying to maintain jobs, companies figuring out if they can do remote or if they can do hybrid. once COVID is done, do they come back into the office and they're still paying like all the expenditures on the buildings and the office space and all that electricity and stuff that they have to pay for. So I think that kind of put like this weird bump stop in between, which really kind of shifts things, but then it shifts things in such a weird way that you can't really figure out like when the actual drop is going to happen. But without speculating too much, if you were not investing like you are and not doing what you are doing and going back to the like when you came off of active duty and you were looking for a place, and say you didn't have a house already and you were looking for a place to, let's change it around. Let's say you were actually, when you were coming off active duty, that you were actually retiring at that point and you had done like 20 years and blah blah blah, and you were looking around the country to figure out where you wanted to go to establish your house for the next 10 or 20 years or whatever it may be. If you're looking for that today, what are a couple places around the continental United States that you're looking at that might be interesting places to live that can keep the cost of living down?
We'll say I've got a list of favorite cities, but they don't fit that second criteria. So, I mean, I love Austin. I love Tampa. I like Denver. I like Nashville. I like Boston. I like San Diego. None of those really meet that last criteria. Nashville, if you live in a suburb, potentially. I think the Midwest. I ended up in Springfield, Missouri, because I've got a kid, and this is where my ex is from, and I'm going to be here or I'm not going to be a dad. This is where I was a recruiter here. That's where I met her, and that's where I got into real estate. So I own stuff here, so it kind of made sense. But I mean, as I look around, I'm like, the median home price in the country is $420, and the median home price in Springfield is like almost half of that. Yep. And so there's a lot of those markets where they're growing slow and steady, but you can get cash flow, you can live affordably. So like if I'm retiring, obviously I would say the best thing you can do is get 100% P&T disability, because that changes the game so much for you. Now you're pulling in enough money, you don't need to work at all. But if you live,
it gets rid of taxes too.
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, Missouri is not one of those states. Texas is. So they get rid of property taxes. Florida, honestly, is great on the tax front, but it's becoming more expensive. So there's some great spots in Florida. So I guess it kind of depends on if you're looking like, if you're planning to buy a home, and, as far as appreciation goes, like Florida, Texas have some good stuff going. But I mean, I would honestly be looking if you're just talking about like, where's a decent place to live that you can afford to live and like never actually have to work again and live a good life, dude. Like, I won't say Kansas, because Kansas is a boring ass place, but Kansas is good too. But like Oklahoma, Missouri, Arkansas, Tennessee, Kentucky, Iowa, Indiana, that whole belt of the flyover like Midwest. I'll put it in perspective here, like Missouri, right? We are a constitutional carry state. So you've got every gun law you could possibly want, recreational marijuana. Like, we are a very easygoing state. Our corporate taxes are like about to get cut in half to like 2%. Our property taxes are like 1%. So even without the military being free, I mean, I pay nothing. It's like $2,000 a year for my primary residence. That's peanuts compared to most places. That's nothing compared to like Texas. State taxes are low. Like, everything here is low tax wise, and honestly, a lot of it's getting lower. It's a slower pace of life. Like, you still got Kansas City, St. Louis that are pretty big, but Springfield's pretty chill. And like, so you got all those things, but you can still buy land cheap. You can still buy a nice place. You could live like a king here for a relatively affordable price. You could go buy 20 acres with a nice house for $500,000 and, live like a king. And then on top of all that, like, the median income here is 46, maybe $47,000 this year. So if you're on retirement plus disability, you're making almost double the median income. Like, you'd live a great life here, and you wouldn't ever have to work again. You could, if you want some toys or if you get bored, right? Most people I think deserve or need some kind of a purpose, some kind of a passion, to stay like mentally healthy. But from a just financial standpoint, like, I can almost live off my disability pay and I didn't retire. Like if I really wanted to, I could shut everything down and live on my disability pay and be just fine. And you can't do that in a lot of states. So I think like the Midwest from a financial like position, even if you only did it for 5 or 10 years and really just saved to invest elsewhere or invested here or whatever, like you could set yourself up for success much faster here than you can in a lot of other places. Cost the pace of life's a little slower, which is great if you have a family. For me as a single guy, it's a little I'm like, man, there's some downsides. Like this is the place people come back to settle, but it could be worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you also get to travel around a lot and stuff too, but then trying to bring a potential girlfriend back to Springfield, Missouri, who maybe has never been there before. It's my brother lives out there in the middle of nowhere, not too far from where you're at, and it's a different kind of place. But yeah, I think about this a lot, and I know a lot of people, and of course it depends on like what they're looking for, what they want, and what they're willing to spend, and how much time they're willing to give up to make that happen. But for me, I'm in full agreement. Like if I can find a place that I can get a job or work remote or whatever it is, but at the end of the day, like if I really just want to tell everybody just to go away and live my life and not be beholden to a company or to anybody else and just live off of my retirement or VA disability or both, I feel like that's kind of the answer for me. Like if I find a spot like that, that's the place. And of course it's got to check a couple other boxes, right? But yeah, if I could live in a place like that, like that's for me the ideal, one of the top 3 or 4 factors that makes the place where I would want to settle down.
Yeah, I agree. And I should also clarify, like I live in town. I'm 2.5 minutes from a Best Buy and 4 minutes from a Walmart. And like I live in a really nice neighborhood in a really nice part of town. And it is like I'm in a 4,800 square foot 6'3.5" that it's an upstairs downstairs, so it has an in-law unit. So I use the downstairs in my office. I Airbnb the upstairs, live in it for free, and it's it's $450,000 house, but it's a great place. And I bought it for $350, and my cost of living here is still so cheap. But I just say that just to say, like, there you can live here and still not live in the middle of nowhere. So some people, I mean, you can also live in the middle of nowhere. Like I'm looking to buy land to move a little bit further out of town and live more of the just in nature peace. Maybe have a horse, let my dogs roam free, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, there's definitely tons of places like that around there. And plus, I mean, you're next to Rolla, which is not too far away. You're not too far away from Kansas City. The thing I will say though is if you go a few hours, west to cross the river to the Illinois side, then things are drastically different. It's the same kind of scenario. Like it's small town America. They've got some bigger cities with bigger amenities. They've got a couple airports, but the cost of living just a few hours away in Illinois is drastically different than living in Missouri.
And the gun laws, and
and taxes and gas prices and like all that stuff.
It's interesting. There's like a whole belt in the middle that's all like Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Texas, Tennessee, Kentucky, Missouri, Iowa. They're all constitutional carry. So I can just like I have a handgun in the glove box, and unless I'm like driving to California, it doesn't matter. And that's cool because in a lot of places that does matter. And so it's, you used to have to like ask permission to cross state lines with a firearm. And now it's like, oh, oops, like whatever, who cares? I drove I drove to a buddy's place in Texas the other day with 3 rifles, 2 handguns, a shotgun, and a flamethrower in the car because we were going to go shoot at this place.
Oops.
Yeah, doesn't matter anymore, So that's cool. I like that part.
No. Well, cool, man. I again, if there's anything else that you wanted to let people know about or anything that you want to point people to, I really wanted to kind of take most of this time for you as well, to be able to let people know, who don't already know, who haven't went and watched the podcast that we did before, and also to catch up because it's been a while, and see how things are going. I like to keep in
Yeah,
touch with people.
I think we covered most everything. I would say, if you're watching this and you really just want a better idea where to start, especially if you're like young in your military career, um, I have a link where you can download a free copy of my book. And honestly, the link is thebestpodcastguest.com, which I think is hilarious. But if you go there, like, you'll find all my socials. You can just ask me questions. But you can, my book is on Amazon or Audible or whatever, but you can just download a PDF copy of it for free. And I wrote that with the idea of like, I wanted to chronologically tell everything I wish I'd known when I joined the military. So like, what do I think I should do the day I joined? I think you should set up your TSP. Okay, what else do you think you should do? Like, I think you should do this. And so it applies to vets too. It's got all that other stuff, but there will be some chapters in there where you're like, I don't need to learn about, how to, picking my job in the military and succeeding in it. But so you can skip some chapters, but it's got probably a third of it is on house hacking with the VA loan and real estate investing and investing in general. And, it's a great, completely free resource for people that, it's funny. I make my employees read it before they, like, when someone starts working with me, I'm like, here, go read this. They're like, really? Like, yeah, it's not an ego thing. I need you to know how I think. Like, now you understand my philosophy.
Yeah, we're trying to do the same. Little by little, we put out a little pamphlet. It's a few pages long, but same. We release it free, and we also have a copy of it on Amazon if anybody wants like the Kindle version of it or whatever. And trying to get down that path, because I'm starting to understand that that's the way that you capture knowledge even more than doing YouTube videos and like all these interviews and podcasts and stuff like that. Like, at the end of the day, there's something a little bit different about capturing that information in a book. And the book just kind of lives on in perpetuity beyond you, beyond your, years and years beyond you after you pass away and things like that. So
I agree.
Awesome, man. Well, I don't want to hold you up all day. I know you got the little man, and got time to spend with him, and he's up and he's wired. So
he is,
and he's plowing through the chips right now.
I know. Yeah. He wanted lunch. Now he's gonna be like, oh no, I'm full. Oh well, great. Right. Me neither. So let me get lunch.
And I'm sorry. Sorry, Vic wasn't able to get on. I think he popped into the thing down there for a second and then he disappeared. I think he was out on a hike or something like that, doing something.
Yeah.
But maybe we can catch up again some other time and do some other topics.
I would love that.
Always open to hanging out with you, man, and spending some time and talking about things and putting out information. So if you need to find Dave, we'll have a link to his stuff. The Military to Millionaire is his YouTube channel. You can also go to the website and find out about the book and also the mastermind that he has set up. And I've, again, recommended it to many, many people.
I appreciate you.
In the side channels. So, because I know you guys are doing good things. I'm in the Facebook group and I kind of get in there once in a while and jump in the conversations. But if you're looking for that, trying to figure out how to invest, where to invest, what to do with your money, hopefully before you get out of the military, but definitely also after you get out of the military. It's a great group of folks. So
I appreciate that.
All right, man. Well, with that, I will let you get back to your day, and thank you for hanging out with us.
I appreciate you, brother. Have a great day.
All right, you too, man. So that's it, everybody. That is the show today. Like I said, we will be doing putting the links to anything down here in the show notes. And if you need anything, reach out to us. You can find us at the Military Retirement Podcast on YouTube. You can find also the Green Logbook with Vic. That's his kind of journal for YouTube for his military transition and his thing that he's doing. We do have the Military Retirement Group on Facebook where you can join a couple thousand other like-minded individuals. If you're trying to figure out retirement, trying to figure out transition, what to do, where to go, what job to get, how to get a job, how to interview, how to find a house, how to just get over that hump into the civilian life. Yeah, just come there, hang out with us, let us know. And we are in there all the time. If you've got any comments you want to put on any of the YouTube videos that you watch, I and Victor both answer those personally. So we will definitely answer any questions you have, and just let us know. And with that, have a good Sunday, everybody, and we will talk to you later.